Hello ladies and gentlemen, if you've made the same choice of not keeping up with Twitter and Reddit, because that's how Riot Games have chosen to communicate with us nowadays, because the client of course is hanging on by a thread, and if they use the client to communicate information to us, it will probably break, and then Mordekaiser would have more bugs, and then Viego would not have a bunch of abilities, something like that. That's not something we can sacrifice for information clarity. Instead, I am going to do these weekly kind of recaps. Of course, nothing has gone on in the last week, so I thought I might just recap what has been going on in this off-season for those who have chosen not to keep up. Of course, if you're a person that has kept up and you've watched a lot of my previous content, that's okay. Hopefully, I'm going to give you some information that is new, the ideas that I'm going to summarize what is going on in the League of Legends world, and keep it in a very digestible and short format. First and foremost, we have huge format changes, in particular for the LEC. The LEC had a problem of having a lot of low-stake BO1s for the majority of the year, where you played 9 weeks of regular play, best of one. Sometimes the seeds are already predetermined, and a lot of the teams are kind of going through the motion of playing them, and sometimes you've had situations where teams are already out of contention for playoffs in week 5, week 6, and all of a sudden you have a lot of these games that no one really gives a damn about. And in order to walk away from this, and in order to expose our teams to more best of 3s and more, best of 5s, they've created this new system. So what is this new system? The year is going to be divided into a winter split, spring split, summer split, and then a season finals. So as you can see the dates here, it's kind of very similar to what we had before. If you're curious who is going to go to MSI, it is the top 2 teams from the spring split, because that, of course, form is so important when it comes to MSI. So spring split is going to carry that extra level of, emphasis in terms of performing if you want to, of course, go to MSI, which I hope that all of the European teams want to go to. You might be surprised when I said 2 teams are going to MSI. I'll talk about that just a little bit later. The system pretty much that is in place is we have best of 1 single round robin, and then the top 8 are going to move into a 2-group system with best of 3 double elimination. And you heard it right when I said top 8. 2 teams are going to, after 3 weeks of play, are going to go on a month-long vacation. Hopefully not a vacation, because they need to re-strategize and they need to figure out what went wrong for them to, of course, not make the bar of top 8, because you've made an investment and you're spending money, and now you're not going to get all that screen time, right? So a system that, in theory, is going to create a little bit of variance because it's best of 1, and new incentives to try very hard early on in the season and win those best of 1s, because it's also is going to affect your seeding coming into, of course, the first top 8 group stage, but also just for the sake of putting your organization out there and being in competition for longer. So basically 2 teams are going to go out, and then the top 8 is going to beef it out in these 2 groups. Best of 3 double elimination means that if you lose 2 best of 3s, you're going to be out of competition, and you're also out, moving into the top 4. So basically, if you win 2 best of 3s in a row, it means that you have qualified as the high seed from your group into the top 4, and then the rest of the teams in your group are going to duke it out in the lower bracket, right? And because imagine this, right? There's going to be a situation where one team winners face each other, losers face each other. Then, of course, the winner of the winner is going to qualify, and then the loser of that winner finals is waiting for the lower bracket winner 2, which is the loser. You get the point, right? You get the point. And then the top 4, depending on the seeding, you're going to face the team that is the lower seed in the opposite group. So we're going to see, teams face off against each other, a lot of built-up hype. These are teams that haven't faced each other in quite some time. You have the group stage, of course, is going to be only for 2 weeks, and then the playoff is going to be for 1 week. So these best of 5s are going to go quick, and they're going to go fast. Eventually, there's going to be a champion. And what does it mean to be a champion? It doesn't mean that you're the LEC champion. It's not quite as extravagant as having that trophy and you can bring it home. You're going to be a split champion. And what does that mean? It means that you're going to then be able to participate in the season finals. You're also going to accumulate a lot of championship points that are going to determine the seedings for, of course, the season finals that is going to be at the end of the year. But as you can see, the winter split is the one that has the least amount of impact. In terms of points, summer split is going to be the one that weighs the heaviest when it comes to who is going to have the seeds in the season finals. Spring split is going to determine who is going to go to MSI. And then the winter split is kind of the warm-up split that has the same amount of championship points as the spring split, but there's no MSI and there's nothing else. This is kind of your way of preparing for what's coming, because there could be a situation where maybe winter split is not going to go so well for you, but then you are capable of re-strategizing and then winning spring split and then maybe translating it into a summer split win. But of course, the championship points are going to be so important. If there is a situation where a single team is going to win multiple splits, meaning let's say they win the winter split and then the spring split, they're going to be automatically granted higher seeds in, of course, this playoff finals. And then on top of that, in a situation where they win 3 splits in a row, they're going to also have a guaranteed spot at the World Championship due to how the seeding is going to work and how much championship points they're going to have at the end of the year. Obviously, they're going to have a shit ton of them because they've just won 3 splits, right? There's going to be 3 slots for the World Championship. Another thing, if you didn't know, I'm going to cover that a little bit later, but the 4th seed is going to be kind of a competition between North America and Europe. They're going to, basically the 4th seed from North America and the 4th seed from Europe is going to battle out for who is going to get the 4th seed for the region. But more on that later when I'm covering the changes to the World Championship. You know, the most common questions, the ones I had, was like, how is seeding going to be determined? In a world where this system is in place, what is going to be happening with the patches? So basically the way they've divided it is for each 3-week segment, only 1 patch is going to be played, which is a fantastic choice by the LEC. I think it's super good. The first best of 1 section is going to be 1 patch, and then of course the group stage into the playoffs is going to be 1 patch too. So it's going to be very important to be able to figure out the patch quickly and build momentum, but at the same time, there's not going to be any huge shocks. There's not going to be someone throwing cold water at you in the shape of a patch, and you're not going to be able to, scramble that, like try to figure out for a weekend and then lose to a champion that got turbo buffed that went under the radar because no one you scrimmed against chose to pick it. The main thing that is going to be difficult here is that we're going to have super weeks. And things are going to go very fast for the teams, and they need to adjust their schedules because in theory, you're going to only be practicing for maybe 3 days, play for 3 days, and that's going to be a major challenge. So I'm excited to see how that is going to, of course, develop. Another thing that they've added is how our tiebreaker is going to be decided. So usually, of course, in a situation where the head-to-head, meaning the win percentage of both teams is going to be similar, what they're going to look at is strength of victory. So strength of victory is a system where they're going to look at, for example, the results of the winter split, and then based off the standings in the winter split, they're going to give everyone a score, meaning number 1, the best team is going to have a better score, and of course the least successful team is also going to have a score. And when tiebreakers are going to be determined, they're going to look at who has the higher strength of victory score. So if a team is even standings against a different team for whatever reason, they have the same score, and the head-to-head is very hard to determine, right? Because how teams face off against each other in this format is going to be very unbalanced. They're going to look at strength of victory. So let's say there's one team in this example that has beaten the top 5 teams, and then one team in this example that has beaten the bottom 5 teams, right? Oh, I think the math, the bottom 5 teams. The team that is equal in the head-to-head that has beaten the better teams is going to then have won the tiebreaker. So this is going to put weight on beating better teams. Of course, it isn't the perfect system because you never know how strength is going to be translated between splits. Maybe something is going to change, maybe a patch changes, but I think it's still quite a fair system because you're going to run into a lot of problems otherwise, right? Due to how the system works. You only play one best of one single round robin and so forth. Another question that you might have is, what is going to happen with side selection? That is going to be predetermined before the league starts. So I believe all the teams already know which sides, which is, of course, completely randomized. It is a minimum that you're going to be playing each side for 4 games. There's no way of evenly balancing out because it's 9 games. You get the gist of it, right? So this is super exciting. This is a big format change. Another thing to point out when it comes to the top 8, the group stage, in terms of how the groups are determined, there's going to be a situation where at the conclusion of regular season, which is taking this, of course, directly from the LEC rulebook, the top 8 teams in the standings will be split into 4 pools. Pool 1, seed 1, and number 2. You get the point. I don't need to read all of them. Each group will get 1 team per pool, randomly drawn, starting with pool 1, progressing into pool 4. The highest seed in each group will choose their first opponent from among the 2 lowest seed in their group. So there's going to be a random factor added on the fact that, of course, a BO1 format is going to also add a little bit of a random factor, a lot of weight on these games, because you're going to potentially create a situation where maybe the groups are going to be very lopsided. Maybe one group is way tougher than the other based off of best of one standing. So that's going to be super crazy. The added effect, of course, is that if you have the number 1 seed or the second seed, you get to choose your opponent in the first round of the best of 3s. So for example, in a group with seeds 1, 3, 5, and 7, seed 1 may choose to face 5 and 7. So they can't choose the second strongest seed in the group because, of course, having the seed 3 or 4 needs to come with some kind of positive advantage. If you're a higher seed than your opponent in this best of 3 system, you're going to have side selection in the first game, and then whoever loses is going to have side selection in the next one, which is a super big deal. So the weight of these best of ones still heavier than ever. We're going to have some crazy group stage best of 3 double elimination, because managing 3 super weeks is going to be a very different challenge for all of the teams involved. We move on now to other changes in terms of formats. Finally, the LCK is going to bless us with double elimination, which is a very big deal. We've been very fortunate that LCK, in terms of the standings in the regular split, have been rather accurate in terms of the matchups because they have double round robins with best of 3s. But we have also missed some extra super exciting matchups that potentially could have, been historical best of 5s. So basically the system is that, as soon as the first round of best of 5, basically the first 2 best of 5s, match 1 and 2 are played, the double elimination bracket is going to start. So round 2 is where the double elimination begins, when there's only 4 teams left, very similar to what we highlighted in Europe. Other than that, in terms of format changes, very little. LCS and LPL is going to remain the same, and I'm not so sure about what's going on in the minor regions. This video would be way too long if we're going to dig into that. The next thing to highlight is, of course, when the leagues are starting. So tomorrow already we're going to have the LPL, which every year they take a break for the Chinese New Year. So we're going to have 2 weeks of play for the LPL, and then they're going to take a break. We have the 14th. This is Central European time here. I believe potentially 1 hour should be ahead, but nevertheless, we continue. And then we have a continuation of on Wednesday, the 18th of January, we're going to have the LCK start with D+ Kia, a team that you should know, Damwon Kia, but they renamed to and they also have a new logo, which looks like a belt buckle. Good for them for promoting safety. And then you have DRX. So this is, of course, not the same team that won the World Championship, only by color and only by name. But all in all, we continue. And this is where the LCK starts, the 18th of January. T1 versus Genji is also an absolute banger. And then we scroll down and we have, of course, the European start. So here you see something different already. Europe is now being played on Saturday, the first day. So this is a case where already I mentioned that Europe is going to be in a super week format already from the get-go, because the teams are going to be playing 3 best-of-1s each week. This format is that they're going to be playing on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, yo. Right? For some reason, I thought of the Eminem song. We continue. We don't get stuck here. The highlight of this LCS schedule, I kind of spoiled it there. I wanted to say the highlight of the schedule is the LCS changes. So the LCS changes, they are now playing on Thursdays and Fridays. So this has been a massive topic of conversation because Thursday and Friday seem kind of like strange days. The reasonings that Riot gave out were very vague and unclear, and the communication around this has been pretty poor. So basically Thursday and Friday definitely aren't super exciting days, but it's something that can be understood, because the reasoning behind Riot's choice is because they don't want to overload their schedule and put a lot of things on the same day, because inherently they are making their own products compete against each other. In this context, the Valorant League is going to be played on the weekends, so they got the more better time slot, which is something that a lot of people have discussed. Valorant is doing super well in North America, and people are speculating this is the reason. The main issue here that most people have is the fact that they've moved the times of when North America play to 12 p.m. So this is 12 p.m. On the West Coast, and then 3 p.m. on the East Coast, which is insanity. So first and foremost, you have it being played on Thursday and Friday, when most people are going to be at work or at school or something like this. So a lot of North American fans were very unhappy about this. If you want to play the devil's advocate in this context, people are thinking, they're looking at where and when Twitch has the most amount of viewers. They're looking to tap into potentially a European viewership base. They've used some kind of metrics to justify this. But the most deafening thing about this whole topic of the LCS changing their schedule for something that seems so much worse is that no teams have talked about it. No teams in the LCS have spoken about this at all. The communication around this was very poor, and the timing of it all was also quite terrible. The timing of the news post was right before Riot Games went on vacation, and there was no additional communication around it. There was no clear reasoning given. There's no conversation around this, which leaves, the community. We are left with this option to speculate. We have no other option. We can only speculate, and currently it's looking quite bad. The public sentiment around this is super bad, and I think that how things are perceived is so important. This thing where if you go on Twitch, a lot of the streamers at the top are getting most of the views. Because most of the time when people see those big numbers and they have a perception of something that you need to see it due to the high numbers that are there, if the perception is very bad in regards to the LCS, then this is of course a very negative hit in their direction. And if we have the perception that any LCS is dying, this is also going to be a very self-fulfilling prophecy. So dangerous times. I have to add though, the LCS teams are more exciting than ever. We have some really good teams, really good team building, which is kind of ironic because this was the year where the LCS teams did make some budget changes. But just to continue with the example, right? You can see here probably one of the most big ticket games is going to be played at 12 p.m. Western time. So it's not the fact that they're going to put lower quality games at the earlier end and then finish off strong. No, they are starting off strong with, of course, 100 Thieves versus Cloud9. Cloud9, really, really cool team. They made a change in the mid lane. They invited Diplex to play for them. No more Jensen. 100 Thieves, of course, Doublelift and Bjergsen. Super, super huge team. This is the big ticket game for the day. You could also argue that FlyQuest versus Team Liquid is going to be a super big one, but you get the gist of it, right? If you're going to schedule this with the intention of, oh, we're going to just front load the bad game, so to speak, this is showing no signs of that at all. They believe by showing this, you know, that the premium slot is the 12 p.m. slot, which is a very interesting experiment to be played out. I just hope that just because the teams are so exciting this year, that is not going to overinflate the ego in regards to this decision, because obviously this is something that hopefully, if it goes bad, that Riot is willing to change over in the LCS. But we will see. Very tricky with esports and metrics because everything is so short-term driven. I think that happens on the side of esports teams and so much else. If you're curious as to why I know about what is, you know, seen as a premium slot and what is not, I was on Fnatic for 2 years and we played the last game every single day. And that was strategically placed. That wasn't because we have black and orange on our screen, so black is associated with maybe the night, and we're going to be playing in the night to make our jerseys pop. No, not at all. This was a strategic, data-driven decision. So, LCS fans quite disappointed because the native fans have no reasonable way of viewing it. So, now in the context of what that has as an impact in terms of the business side, you know, if you're investing into the LCS and you're investing into LCS teams and the viewership is not coming from North America, your advertisement is kind of not well spent. Because usually if you're investing into a local league, you want to invest locally too. So I foresee a lot of issues potentially with this thought process in mind. Of course, it has been stated many times that you know, Riot Games has no incentive to let LCS die because this is, of course, their home region. Their arena is right next to the big Riot Games office, and a lot of the World Championship global sponsors are, of course, also tied to America. So they have every incentive to make it work. So who knows? I just wish that they would communicate their reasoning a little bit more clear, because there's a lot of fluff in this article that, you know, I won't bore you with. In more positive news, we have changes to the MSI format and also the World Championship format. So first and foremost, I mentioned before that 2 teams are going to go to MSI, and that is true for the LCS, the Europe, LPL, and also LCK. We're going to have 1 team from LLA and whatever region that is. Sorry, Vietnam, LGL. Very, very sorry for not knowing your logos. Too much league for me to watch. We continue. In the play-ins, basically, we're going to have 7 teams. I believe 5 teams are going to auto-qualify to the main event. And just because the LCK won the World Championship, they're going to have 2 teams auto-qualify to the main event. And then the number 1 LEC seed, number 1 North American seed, and the number 1 LPL seed are going to auto-qualify to the main event. And then we have a play-ins format. This play-ins format, the teams are going to be seeded in a way where hopefully the major region teams are not going to face off against each other in the first round. And then basically it is a double elimination best of 3 bracket. You win 2 best of 3s, you advance, you lose 2 best of 3s, you're out. So let's run by an example. Team 1 here wins against Team 2. They are going to face off against Team 3. And the winner of this one advances to the tournament. The loser of this one is going to face off against the winner of Team 2 and 4, who lost, of course, the first round. And then the winner of this secondary best of 3 in the loser bracket is going to then face off against the loser bracket winner of the other group. Of course, this is necessary because there's only 3 slots. If there was a situation where the LCK would not receive their auto seed, then Team 2 and 7 would qualify to the tournament. But in this case, they want to offer LCK with something extra because they've done so well at the previous World Championship that they're going to have 2 seeds in the tournament, and Team 2 and 7 are going to duke it out. This is the loser final, and the Team 7 advances. What is this main stage now for the MSI? That is the question, and I'm going to answer it right away. I don't even know why I posed the question. It is going to be simply a playoff double elimination bracket. This is super exciting. Super exciting. No, beyond words how exciting this is. We're going to have double elimination playoff bracket where in the first initial round, they're going to make sure that teams from the same region are not going to face off against each other. And then it's just the wild, wild west. We're going to have so many different matchups, so many unique matchups, and you're going to have the opportunity to make crazy runs all the way through. If you're asking, what does the winner bracket, a winner gain from winning the winner's bracket? Well, some time to prepare and a little bit of, side selection in the first game. That is what you gain. You don't get an extra life. You're not going to be playing back-to-back best of fives like it's a Smash tournament or a fighting game tournament where you had to, you get an extra stock. You can lose a set and still win. That is not the case in League of Legends esports. It's hard to create a more significant advantage than that because, it's kind of silly that you go through a winner's bracket and then you lose the final as an example and you don't get the extra life that everybody else did. It is, of course, an imperfect system, but this is going to definitely crown whoever is actively, the best team in the world. That is what a loser bracket creates for you. You, without a doubt, are going to create a situation where you will know who is the best team and also which region is the best one in the world. So this is the MSI changes. Super cool. Best of threes are going to be quite cruel towards, of course, the minor league teams because they're not going to have the same amount of exposure. But esports is in a position where they need to bring in that viewership and they've raised the stakes for the matchups in a very interesting way. And, in the end, there are certain teams that people love watching and then there are teams that people like watching less. But all in all, high stakes matches all the way through. This is beautiful. We continue to the World Championship, which is also receiving a very, very neat revamp. We're going to have 22 teams instead of 24. There's some regions that have been dissolved or absorbed by other regions. We move on. Don't need to get stuck on that too much. Play-ins is going to be in a very similar fashion to what we mentioned previously. It is going to be a best of 3 double elimination. If you lose 2 BO3s, you're out. As per usual, it is going to be best of 3, very similar to the MSI format. In this case, the difference is that there's going to be 4 slots, I believe, to fight for. It might be 4. Am I crazy? I'm just going to read this through to make sure I'm not crazy. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, dun, dun. Yes, 4 teams. Sorry for that. We continue on to the group stage format, which is completely revamped. For those who know a Swiss format, for those who don't know, I will explain the Swiss format. So basically, all of the teams face off against each other, and then the winners face off against each other. So whoever won the first round is going to face each other, and then the loser is going to face each other. And then it continues. You're going to have a situation where the winners of this particular round, the 1-0 round, is going to move on to the 2-0 round. And then they're going to be playing a best of 3. So that is the most unique thing about this whole Swiss format, is that when the elimination matches are occurring or the qualifying matches are occurring, best of 3s will be in place. So whenever you're fighting to qualify to the playoffs of the tournament or you're fighting for your life, boom, best of 3, no longer best of 1s. you're going to actually have, an appropriate amount of impact. Best of ones, you have this situation, best of ones, and then you follow to the second round, best of ones, and then all of a sudden best of threes are already starting, except for the teams that went 1-1, because of course they're not playing for their tournament life. So in theory, to summarize the system, if you're ever at 2 wins, the next game is going to be about qualifying to the tournament. If you're ever at 2 losses, the next game is always going to be about staying alive in the tournament. So basically 2 wins, the 3rd win is going to get you in the tournament. 2 losses, the 3rd loss is going to kick you out of the tournament. So this is a very gorgeous system. The only concern I have in regards to the system is that Riot has mentioned that this first round of BO1s is going to be completely randomized, which for me is completely crazy. There might be a situation where teams are going to murder each other. The best of the best are going to face off against each other already in the first round, which is going to create some inaccuracies in terms of the team's strength. I believe that the impact of being the number 1 seed of the LPL and the LCK or LEC or North America even should have some significance here. Because if you create a situation where, let's say, the first LPL seed plays against the first LCK seed, it doesn't make that much sense. And there's definitely situations where good teams can falter earlier due to lack of a seeding impact in the first round. I think this is super important. All in all, I think it's a positive format change, because we will no longer have groups that are very decided, like early decided. There's no more conversation about group of life or group of death. Problems that came with, of course, the group system. If the conversation is about group of life, group of death, it inherently means that there's something flawed in how the system is built up. In this way, we're going to have very exciting matchups from the get-go, and we don't know the whole schedule coming into the World Championship for the 2 weeks that the group stage is being played, right? That's what's so crazy about this, is that this format creates stakes from the get-go. Every match matters, every match is super impactful, and then your tournament life is not determined by best of ones. So this is a big bonus for China. Yes, LPL is very happy with this change, because we've seen many good LPL teams falter to a BO1 system, which is something that they've never played, and they seem to be terrible at it. So God bless them. With that being said, this is the Swiss format. I mentioned my concerns. We move on to the knockout stage. So the knockout stage remains the same. So Riot gave the reasoning as to why they've chosen to do exactly this. And they want to carry that same idea that they've created in the group stages, that they just want to make sure that every match has as high stakes as possible. They've also mentioned the issues of a double elimination bracket, that it isn't entirely fair to the team that is going through all the way in the winners bracket. Both systems are imperfect, and they want to make sure that each game and each best of 5 comes with a lot of weight. They want it to be as dramatic as possible, and they want to make the product, as exciting as possible. And I think that part of it is kind of fair. I think that's okay. The competitor in me, of course, wants to see a very similar format to MSI, but I understand the reasoning as to why they want to maintain the best of 5, single elimination bracket. So the beautiful thing here is that, on the esports side, the communication has been super strong. The LEC Format Changes and so forth, the format changes for MSI, and of course the World Championship has been super good. The reasonings, like the blog posts from them, have been very thorough in terms of the information. I will link these in the description below if you want to check them out yourself. Finally, a big piece of drama that has occurred in the League of Legends world is the Brink of Infinity. The Brink of Infinity is the 2023 League cinematic. So for those who don't know, this is something that drove a lot of people crazy out there, like insane. It has driven me crazy, because in this conversation, everyone, a lot of content creators out there are moving on from League of Legends, and we are slowly, coming to terms with the idea that League of Legends might be dying. We are very fortunate with the fact that DRX and T1 and the story of this previous World Championship was beyond comprehension, beyond words in terms of how perfect it was for the actual storyline of what Deft went through and DRX went through. So the numbers are looking super, super good, but in terms of the content and what is being, seen as a tangible investment into League of Legends, the majority of fans are quite angry, quite upset, in fact. We've been struggling with bad clients, and we've been struggling with the lack of content, and new skins are being pushed upon us. And there's always been this kind of sentiment that, League of Legends is just the cow that they milk for money to invest into maybe Arcane or the Riot MMO or Valorant or maybe TFT, right? And more things that are coming from the Riot camp kind of confirms the suspicion. And this, of course, has the whole community concerned. When you are playing a game like League of Legends for a very long time, you have, you commit a lot of hours and you've committed yourself into this world and you have so much information about this world. So you've kind of put yourself in a position where you are kind of growing with the world. And when you've, like in my position, I've played League of Legends for 13 years now, I'm quite invested. Right? If League of Legends died tomorrow, there will be a lot of information that would be very useless in my mind. I would keep the memories, but I'm hoping to build some more and feel that level of progression together with the game. And I think this is the level of commitment that a lot of fans out there have. They are, they know every character. They know all the esports moments. They log into the game on a daily, right? And this kind of gives us, Riot Games took the reins of what Blizzard used to be, and Blizzard had such a fall from grace. They were dominating the whole world, and then everything kind of began to fall apart. Bad decision after bad decision. So the community has raised a lot of concerns, and this season 2023 cinematic was definitely a very big catalyst for this discussion, because if you haven't seen it, you shouldn't watch it, because it is terrible. It is terrible. Like, it's fine, but in the context of what the previous cinematic was, which was the call with Ornn with his beard and Pantheon climbing the mountain, Leona fighting back, Aurelion Sol, all that good stuff. The Sejuani and the Olaf fighting the Volibear babies, because Volibear is a god, he would be too big, and all that good jazz, It was a beautiful, beautiful cinematic trailer that really, really inspired everyone to create their own stories within the game. It's like you watch that cinematic, you want to play more of the game, and all of a sudden, boom, you are, in a situation where, you kind of, you feel more aligned with the characters that you're playing, And that's so important. And it feels like Riot has been taking the approach of really, really, leaning into their competitive success, because the main thing that Riot has done well, right, and is the competitive balance of the game. The balance of the game has been super, super good, and they've been very fortunate with how the tournaments have been playing out. And it feels like they are really, really leaning into this direction. Another thing that has been very problematic, right, is just the lack of content. Every season, you add something new, but this year we practically got nothing. We got some improvements to the Champion Select. You can swap between one another, and there's been some quality of life changes that I don't think necessarily justify having that as your big reveal at the end of the year. Another thing is that they hyped up the change to the Chemtech Dragon and so forth. And, the Chemtech Dragon was just a problem of last year. They were supposed to give us Hextech Drake and Chemtech Drake in unison with Arcane, and that was supposed to be a big reveal, but then the Chemtech Dragon was so terrible that they had to put it on hold. So in reality, we got quality of life changes and fixes to things that were broken in the past, and a couple of new mythics that kind of have broken the game. In terms of content, League of Legends is quite starved, and this is where people are concerned. I guess the main concern that is often reiterated, and a concern that I agree with, is that the main focus for Riot has been the competitive aspect of the game, and this is something that they've done so well. But in order for a game to survive, you need to nurture and invite the casuals. Give people a lot of different ways to play League of Legends, and you will create a fan base that is vast and very different, and this fan base will build loyalty within your products. This is what happened with, of course, Warcraft 3 and Blizzard. Everyone was so excited for World of Warcraft due to how good Warcraft 3 and the Frozen Throne was, the expansion, of course, and then Diablo 2 and the Lord of Destruction expansion. These were masterpieces, and Warcraft 3 had this genius about it, that it had the map creator built into the game. You could create any map, and it allowed everyone that had a Warcraft 3 copy to play Warcraft 3 in so many different vast ways that gave life to the MOBA that we're all playing today. And this, of course, created such a level of loyalty and momentum coming into the World of Warcraft and its launch, that it was just, one of the biggest events that has ever occurred in gaming history in terms of, the evolution of it. And now with League of Legends, there's so few ways of playing the game. I think the competitive side is good, and they're making a lot of positive changes with MSI and Worlds and everything else. But in terms of the content, in terms of the stories, in terms of, how they're actively giving players different ways of playing League of Legends, that has been very lacking. In the past, we had new different game modes. They tried to see what stuck around and what worked and what didn't. Imagine a world where League of Legends would have a kind of map editor that would allow players to create new game modes themselves. We would have some crazy stuff out there for sure. And it would just make people so much more invested into the characters of the game. Because the beauty of the Warcraft 3 thing, right, and it being played in the same engine, is that you kept seeing the same characters over and over again, unless you played some Dragon Ball and Naruto, where someone had some custom skins. But you kept seeing the same characters and the same kind of landscape over and over again. And that's something that you kind of build a loyalty with. And being involved in League of Legends and playing League of Legends is very important, that if League wants to maintain its kind of stature as the esports game and the big game that everybody knows about and is always on the top of the list if someone wants to compete, then they need to also create things that are interesting for casuals. And I'm not saying it's only interesting for casuals, because I mentioned before, like, I am a very competitive person, but I loved the call. I loved the call, which is, of course, the last year's cinematic. I loved the story of champions. I loved the quotes. Whippo, a former player of mine and a very well-known pro player, he always says that he loves quotes of the champions, whether he's playing Aatrox or Pantheon. He's always feeling the champion as he plays it. And I think that's such an important part of the immersion of playing a game and really falling in love and aligning yourself and really committing your time into a world, because you want to keep that trust that the world will develop and it will grow with you. And in World of Warcraft, that was definitely the case, but then eventually the trust was broken. And of course, there's an element of people just moving on, but there's also a very big element here that, we have seen very little signs of investment so far. So I wanted to just scroll through the Reddit top this week. So basically we have this budget cinematic someone made as a meme, right? Basically someone just made this silly version in paint with the flames, and then someone said it's time to release the nuke. Riot is clearly out of money. They need to drop Pool Party Ari as soon as possible. Yes, I would buy that. The best way to play League as a boomer is to pick Malzahar. That's entirely a different conversation. And then someone says, do we have to be scared? Are they reducing the budget of League so much? So basically these are all the things that were in the Riot Please 2023, what they've created. Ari took 300 years and she looks identical. It definitely looks a little bit different, but definitely not something that is, wow, now the game is different. Skarner was supposed to get a visual update, but he's still in a concept stage. And apparently the pictures that they showed were pictures that they showed a very long time ago. Champions getting postponed left and right. No new events announced for 2023. This is very concerning. Valorant getting better cinematics for a skin bundle. So the Valorant cinematics are quite clean and neat, but they're very different from the cinematics in the past. Wild Rift getting so many exclusive and high quality skins. I don't know about that. I don't play mobile games because... yeah, why would I? That's sorry excuse for a cinematic for 2023 season. That's something that we already talked about. We scroll through more. A Riot statement regarding the cinematic and their investment in League. So basically here, this was a sorry. This was an apology from Riot Games, a message from Riot about season. We launched a cinematic as a part of the season, start every year since 2018. And make no mistake, everyone on League knows how much you love them. So do we. This year, there was some unprecedented circumstances that had us choose an alternate approach to the season 2023 video. However, we believed it could still embody League's broad universe and competitive spirit while celebrating the start of a new season. So this is where I get this impression that Riot is just kind of riding and surfing the wave of how good their competitive scene is. And that's just not going to work out, right? We've heard your feedback, and we want to acknowledge Brink of Infinity missed the mark for the action-packed, champion-led trailer you expected and has led to further speculation about their investment in League. Yes. Honestly, we should have been more communicative, which might have helped with some of that feeling and speculation. We do believe that League has a bright future and we're investing in that, but we can do a better job of sharing those plans with you. We are committed to giving you more details about what that investment looks like in the next couple of days. So basically, I couldn't care less about this tweet. This is not going to change the feeling for most, right? The main thing is this last line. We are committing to giving you more details about what that investment looks like in the next couple of days. So this is where what is going to appear in the next couple of days? What is the information? What is the reason, right? They mention we should be more communicative, but then they've given us very cryptic reasons as to why we have this terrible video. Unprecedented circumstances. Now, that's not communicative at all. So this is definitely a message that is just put out there for some damage control. It isn't really solving any problem, and people are not so happy in this context, right? People are very, very unhappy. And so am I, because I love League of Legends. Honestly, when I was watching the call 2022, the last cinematic, I almost cried, really, because for me that cinematic awakens everything in me again. My passion for the game, my love for the game, and this did quite the opposite. With that being said, I think we've covered everything that needs to be covered leading into this year of League of Legends. I promise future, if you manage to make it this far, I promise future weekly recaps are going to be a lot shorter than this, but it was, of course, a lot to cover. I hope that this video finds you well. With that being said, I'll catch you guys on the flippity flop. And if you sneeze during this video, bless you and bless your face. Please like and leave a comment below. It would help me out a lot because the algorithm, you have to feed it. You have to feed it comments and likes and all that good jazz. And that's it. Thank you very much. See you. Did my microphone work this entire time? Yes, it did. God bless.